Welcome to Share Truth and Apply Scripture, the radio program for Engage Magazine on American Family Radio. Let me ask you a question. Have you heard the recent studies, all of the recent statistics? I don't care who it's from. I don't care who it's by. If you read any studies, what you see is a trend that says millennials are leaving the faith.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. The sky is falling and it's all terrible, doom and gloom. That's exactly what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
In studio, we've got Jordan Shambly, Cedra Sartin. It's more difficult. Cedra
When you put them
Sartin.
together,
You put it together, it is difficult.
It's a tongue twister.
It is.
We'll
and I
get
like
there.
tongue twisters. Yes, we'll get used to it. She's also going to be with us next week. So tune in next week. You'll get to hear me butcher her name again. Before we get started, I do want to say, if you want to see the lovely Cedra Sartin, you can view this program on YouTube. Just you can go to engagemagazine.net. We'll have all the links there for you. So guys, let me ask you a question. How many times have you heard that our generation is leaving the church?
Oh, all the
Too
time.
many to count, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it all the time.
Okay. One follow-up question. How many of your friends have left the church?
A few. And
Yeah.
a few. I could think of a few millennials who have left the church, but not many.
I actually have a good many friends who
Yeah.
have left the church. And, going to a Christian college like I did, and when you go into it, everybody goes in with this is a Christian college, Christian community. So most of them were going to church of some sort, but then, kind of fell away as they went along.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. You and I actually went to the same college here in Northeast Mississippi. And that is a thing. There's a lot of people. Now, this college that we went to is a Christian college. Has a lot of people training for ministry in there. And so a lot of people have indeed left the faith, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. But one of the things that has struck me about that is why people left the faith. And I think we have to, as we always want to do, we want to be really careful with our terms, right? We want to be really careful with what we say and with how we say it. We're not perfect, but we do try.
Right.
So when we say somebody leaving the faith, what do we mean? Do we mean that they just stepped out of church for a while? Do we mean that they absolutely left Christianity? What exactly are we meaning?
Well, I think it can mean several different things depending on, what's in your head. But I think when I hear it coming from most articles and stuff, we had these good church kids who we put all our hopes in, they're going to carry the torch forward in Christianity, and they've disappointed us, and they've decided to not be with us anymore. And that's what I hear. That's the meaning that I hear behind when they say it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one thing too that I think is really important that we need to discuss is this. I see it as there's two different types of people who are either outside the church because they've never been in it, or were in the church and have now left. One are those who are simply uninterested in the gospel. All right, so they're not just against the gospel; they just don't care.
Right.
And I think that the way we approach that person, and we're specifically talking about the millennial generation, our generation, just because that's the air that we breathe. And we know there are specific obstacles there that we can address. But there's another type of person who is outside the faith, and those are the ones who are antagonistic toward the gospel. There's no way we could fit both of these into one program. And so next week, we're going to come back to this, and we're going to talk about some of the obstacles that are that some of the obstacles, and also some of the ways we can approach those who are antagonistic to the gospel. But today we do want to focus on those who are simply uninterested.
Right.
And I think in some ways they're harder than those who are antagonistic.
Yeah.
Because those who are antagonistic typically have at least thought about the faith.
Yeah, and they have a measure of interest.
Right.
If you're antagonistic to something, when you hear it, your ears prick up. There's a hook there.
Yeah.
And if you have something against it, usually you're going to look at it. If you just
You've
don't
thought
care,
about it.
you think about it. But if you don't care, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
So there's nothing really being the gospel's not being presented to you. And then if you are totally against Christianity or religion of any kind, you're going to look for ways to destroy it. And if you're looking at true Christianity, that's hard to do because truth is going to always turn around and
Yeah, and there again, we don't want to get too much into that because that is going to be
That was a little
next
preview
week.
for
Little
you.
preview for you.
Yeah.
But we do want to spend this episode talking about those who are uninterested in the gospel. And there's a bunch of different reasons. But I do want to, there's something that we need to discuss before we can really get there, and it's this. Do you think those who have left the church, have left the faith, do you think it's because, do you think they're really leaving, or do you think they're finally just being honest that they were never there?
From what I've seen and from what I understand even in the scriptures, I think that they're just being honest about what they've always, whether they know it or not, what they've always believed. Because, I mean...
So their actions are finally consistent with their beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we've all grown up here in the Bible Belt, where it's pretty much expected for you to go to some sort of church.
It's cultural.
So there's a church on every corner. And so most people are in church. And if you just look statistically, some of those people are going to turn away at some point.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, just because it's something that is expected of us and has become a part, it's just so culturally ingrained into us. We don't think as much about it, and it's just a part of everyday life. And so sometimes we don't get up on our studying, and so then we can really fall into this uninterested category, just because it's like anything you see. Like most people from a city would probably be really confused if they were going down the road and saw a tractor and stuff. For me,
A tractor,
I drive,
my personal pet peeve
I
right
drive
there.
through farmlands to get here every single day. I get stuck behind tractors all the time. So it's just nothing different. It's not different to me. It's nothing new.
And also in the South, there seems to still be a bit of, it's still slightly socially advantageous.
There you go.
To label yourself a Christian. I think in some places in the country, even like in national politics, type of thing, you have a social advantage if you label yourself a Christian. So real quick, so what we want to do, we've only got a few minutes left in this first half of our program, but I do want to hit one of what I think are one of the biggest obstacles to those who are uninterested, and it's this: we are very easily distracted.
Oh, yeah.
We love us some distractions. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to kind of give the excuse, we're the most distracted generation ever.
No.
Every generation has distractions.
Exactly.
I don't care. I was just kind of researching this. I was reading a sermon by Charles Spurgeon, and he was talking about how easily distracted people were by plays and by novels and all of these things. And I'm like,
what's a novel? Hang on.
what?
I haven't read one of those in a while.
Yeah, but I'm just like, you know what? And here's the thing. I love reading. I've not been shy about that. I can be just as distracted by a good book as by a good show on Netflix.
Right, yeah.
And I think what we tend to do, especially in our age, because there's so many different things that we can be distracted by, how can we get people, especially our friends, to focus and to think about these really difficult things? Because these are not pleasant. When we're talking about eternity, that's not necessarily, or death even, it's not necessarily a pleasant subject.
Well, for me personally, when I came to that point where it just kind of cut through all the distractions was because it was that kind of visceral thing. You come to terms with, okay, eternity is real and death is real. And so is all the stuff that I've sort of in my mind believed throughout all my childhood, and come into that realization, it's not pleasant, and we're not supposed to look for it to be pleasant. So I think maybe if you're ministering to a friend who is disinterested, just be honest and say, look, you're going to die.
Yeah.
I mean,
say it with that laughter in your voice too.
Yeah, that's not creepy at all. But honestly, that's what they need to hear sometimes, and it's shocking, and they're not going to like you, but that's what they need. That's what their soul needs.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that kind of woke me up about, it's going to be 8 years now, excuse me. I was in a pretty bad car accident, which I walked away from. I was beat up, bruised, battered, but there's that split second in my mind when that other car hit me. And it really was like, wow. Because at that point, I'm still teenage. I was like 19.
Right.
And so I'm thinking I've got all this time ahead of me. But right at that moment, that could have been it.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was told, I don't know why you don't at least have a broken bone or something. I was told that by people, by doctors. And so it could have very well been my last day. And that really kind of switched something in my mind. And with the way that I looked at other people, as these are souls going out into eternity, one way or another. And so it really made me start, thinking of time as more of a precious thing than I was before.
Yeah, and I think one thing that both of you have actually kind of said is that it's not a clever turn of phrase. It's not a word that someone said, hey, think about your death. All right. One of my friends, one of his favorite phrases is memori menti. And it says, and it is, remember you will die. And he uses it as kind of an encouragement that I will live in eternity and embrace Christ, so I can endure whatever is coming here, because I get to look forward to eternity with Christ. But I think that there is something that we tend to do where we want to say, oh, well, I just need this phrase to tell my friend, to tell my child, to tell somebody, and that's going to be the ticket that's going to turn them on their head, and it's going to make them realize, oh, you're going to die one day. Don't.
Yeah.
All right, in all honesty, you're not going to find that phrase. And that's when we're having these discussions, when we're trying to cut through these distractions, one of the things that we always have to keep in mind is that we are reliant on the Holy Spirit.
That's good.
There is no magic word. There is no magic formula. There is no movie we can watch or book we can send somebody. All those things may help. But ultimately, we definitely rely on the Holy Spirit to not only speak through us, but to speak into them. And so with that in mind, we're going to hit a couple of other things that keep people uninterested in the gospel, and also some distractions and some obstacles that we have to overcome. And we're going to do that in the next segment. You're not going to want to miss it.